Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dan Corns. I'm the Commercial Director at St Richard's. Just to give you a background, I've been there 16 years, but been in the sector for about 20 years in total. The presentation from me today is hopefully something that you can take away if you are thinking of opening a cafe and a combined bookshop and a much larger shop. I'll be covering the areas of what I did, the research I've done, and collating it into presentation so that you can take it away or download it off Help the Hospices. It'll be highlighting the good points, the pitfalls and different things that happened through the process, and hopefully will point you in the directions of where you need to go instead of actually doing a lot of research that I did to try and get there. So you might get there a bit quicker if you decide to do it. But first of all, just to cover where we've been asked to look at what we were doing 10 years ago, and I suppose for me, and you can ask the question to yourself, is that I certainly wasn't paying a high rent that I'm paying now for a shop, and wouldn't have dreamed of ever thinking of having a rental of 60,000 plus. If I'd have taken it to my board, they'd have probably just laughed me off the planet, sort of thing. So for me, that's a big difference to what's happened. What do you think the biggest changes, development in charity retail over the last 10 years? I think without a doubt it's the improved professionalism that we have within the sector. Without a doubt that's what's made a massive difference. We're all upping our game, and I think that's really changed us massively. How do you think the sector is growing stronger together? And I think the reality of that is the two organisations really. One, Hospice UK, the retail group that we've got, and also the CRA, where it brings us all together. So that's my vision, that's my thoughts on that, and it's something for you to think about and for yourself. So, the background. There's a lot of information on these slides. Not all of it I'll go through, we can ask questions about it, but this is just to give you some ideas of what was in my thinking. I didn't just say suddenly I'm going to say, right, I'm going to go and get a very big shop and I'm going to do this and that. We'd had an established bookshop for about 9 years in the position that it was in. Couldn't really grow anymore. It was the footfall was never going to increase because I was reliant on the arcade to do something about it, and all the shops were closing. So we waited for the end of the lease, and we'd also had a temporary shop in a large unit not so far from the bookshop. And then I stumbled upon a shop that I'd seen 3 to 4 years ago. It was everybody heard of Lakeland? Yeah, Lakeland. Well, they decided to come off, or are deciding to come off the high streets, and they were going to go into supermarkets, so they got a change of sector. So this was a very big shop, and their shop fit is to a high standard. So I'd seen this shop and thought this would be great, we could take it on. So luckily, 4 years later, it came on the market. I'd heard about it, and we put an offer in, and we were up against a bank and a supermarket. So it was quite a challenging process, and if they wanted it, it was obviously a prime site. How could we justify it? What we did was we looked at obviously our two rents that we were paying in our two shops, combined them, and realistically the two was a saving of £5,000. Plus I could get another business in, because the size of the shop downstairs was about 25% bigger than our clothing shop, and the upstairs was about 50% bigger, double the size of our bookshop. So it meant I could have a lot of scope to look at where I was going. So basically the questions that we asked, and I'm sure they're the same things that you asked, but I'm going to go through them because of one of the first things was we planning permission. It was a different business from retail. It's not hard to get a change of use for cafes now or anything, because the high street are not desperate to a point, but they want to get more people in there, so they're fine with it. But would we have gone ahead if we hadn't have got the planning permission to put a cafe in? We would have, but I do not think we'd have had the success of the shop that we've got at the moment, because upstairs trading is never as good as downstairs trading. You've got to have something to drag them up there. Yeah, books is a destination, so they will, but the cafe has really enhanced that. Identify the premises, which we did, and get the right one, and we stood and waited for this one, and it was, as I say, 4 years, so we just held back and it came, and if something's going to come, it was definitely a dream to reality. Standalone or combined, would we open a cafe on its own? I don't think we would. I'm not saying I won't, because you can always turn around and next year I'll do something similar. You said you weren't, but you have. I don't think we would. It seems to work in this concept, which you'll see as we develop the presentation. Where will it work? What area? We were very specific, or I was, in the fact that, you know, we've got 18 shops in Worcestershire, but it had to be an area where there was a large amount of people that would support the cafe. So we were in a condensed area of the middle of Worcester, of about 90,000 within a 10-mile radius. So it's got a good catchment. Do we have the skills going into a cafe? Totally different area. Merging the two shops, I suppose I should say after that speaker, merging volunteers together. Very different background, bookshop volunteers, for those of you who have, I mean, it might be my experience, but generally it's similar across all sectors. There's bookshop volunteers and there's the ladies that do the clothing and sorting of the clothing. Bringing them together was not an easy thing to do. I interestingly enough, with the clothing shop, we didn't tell them anything apart from they were moving. I didn't explain my reasons for it, partly because we were in a temporary shop and it didn't matter to them. They were looking forward to moving. The bookshop had been established 9 years. It was a bit quirky, it was a bit old, it was a bit dusty, it was fine, but it was typically old-style bookshop. So I spent ages discussing it with them. I engaged them, I involved them in everything we were going to do. It was a nightmare. I told them too much. So it's a real difficult one. What do you do in the future? But we tried to do it, but it was a bit difficult. When they got together, slowly it has got an awful lot better, but there were issues as regards I'm not working, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that, because we've tried to get our volunteers now to work on different areas of the shop. So if they need to go downstairs from the bookshop, they'll go and help on the clothing. So that is coming along, so that's good. Is it the right thing for us as we move forward? And that is what we decided that we felt it was going to do. We talked about this earlier, and it was a question I was asked at the Charity Retail Association. There was a meeting I was at not so long ago on a radio programme, and it was to do with about opening different shops, and particularly sort of a cafe, and how that competition is with others, and why are we doing it? And I answered, and then I went away and I've thought about it since, and I thought, actually, do you know what? I think we all could say this quite happily. We are developing as a business the same as supermarkets have changed. Supermarkets don't just sell food anymore. They've got cafes, they've got banks, they've got travel agents. It's progression. Garden centres are no longer just selling plants. They're selling everything. So why do people chastise us as a sector for expanding and growing and developing as a business, the same as others have? And it suddenly dawned on me, and then they just looked at me and went, oh yeah, we can't really argue that. So for us, it was a natural development. Some of the things to consider, I'll just go through them very briefly, so we started late. Equipment for a cafe particularly, big investment. Do we buy or rent? We bought. I wish I'd have rented. Two sides to that. If you buy it, and if it doesn't work, you've got an asset to sell. If you commit to a rental and it doesn't work, you've still got to pay the rental. So it's a difficult one. Vintage or new style, why I've put that there is I had quite a bit of pressure to say, right, well, we've got all these cups, vintage cups, we've got all these tables that come into our furniture shop, we've got all this crockery, do we use it? My vision then was, okay, if we use it, what happens? Old stuff, will it go into a dishwasher, or is it a commercial dishwasher without breaking? No, it won't. And then I visualised actually somebody paying £2.50 or whatever it is for a cup of coffee, and the one cup's that size and then the other one's that size, and somebody complaining that hers is bigger than mine. So I looked at it and thought, no, let's go new. So we didn't follow that. There's no reason why you couldn't, but I think it was a decision that we've made. Number of covers in the cafe is important to get right. The investment in the equipment is almost the same whether you're serving 20 people or 100. So you've got to get the payback as regards actually how many people you can bums on seats, so to speak. Suppliers in-house or external, we've mixed that. When I say in-house, the Hospice actually supplies us with cakes, sandwiches, pre-packed, and they're taken down every morning, fresh. But we've also got external suppliers, which I've got a list of at the end slide, which is a prop-up. My concern about the Hospice, even though it's absolutely supportive of everything we're doing, is that when push comes to shove, if there's an issue in the facilities of catering, the first thing that will go to support will be the cafe. Patients will always come first, and so they should. but I couldn't leave my business to chance, because then they'd say, well, what are you doing? So we've got a mixture of external and internal suppliers for that. Volunteers' duties, we looked at that very carefully because they wanted to get involved with the cafe, and were they appropriate to do it? We had an incident, sort of, you know, I don't know, many of you know that sketch, dinner ladies with 2 soups, you know. We had that with 2 coffees on the floor. So it was getting the right ones to realise that actually it's not the area that they should be in, but that's all bedded down. Department budget, we were very conscious that we didn't lose sight of what our business originally was in both of those shops when they were separate, because just putting it all together, forget all the problems. But the reality is we still need to compare the business that we were doing in the other bookshop as we are upstairs and the other clothing shop. So we've been very careful on looking at that. Service in the cafe, I've talked about that. We use our vans and drivers coming in to do that. One of the 2 of these are repeated. Do we have the skills? Café is a very different organisation to business, to our standard business. I've got getting the right coffee. And the weirdest thing is, as I said earlier, 20 years I've been in the sector and made lots of decisions, opened lots of shops, lots of diversification in shops. The last thing I chose, because I couldn't make my mind up, was the coffee. There's hundreds of coffee makers out there, roasters. This country's full of them, and they're all over the place, and they're all the best. Everybody you go to, ours is the best. And the pricing structure is phenomenal, from £6 a kilo to £30 a kilo. You know, it is phenomenal. So, and it will make or break the cafe. It was one of the things. If you have a bad coffee, you go somewhere, you won't go back. You don't get a second chance. You can't get a chance. So, we're just trying this blend. If it isn't any good, we'll put another one out next week. It was a difficult one to make. Luckily, we've been all right. We've had a bit of alterations at the moment. We actually operate 2 blends of coffee at the moment, but there's always a cost to that. You do need a separate grinder if you do it. And when you look at the cost of them, they're £600 to £1,000. So it's something that you need to look at. But it does help when people say that's too strong and we can offer more. Pricing structure, don't underprice. We made a sort of a mistake of trying to undercut others. There's absolutely no need to. If you've got your business right, and we know now that the supporters, the people who are coming into our cafe, are supporters of the hospice, which is massive amount of people coming in. We've got general public coming in, but the cafe particularly is supporters of the hospice in a different dimension, so that's great. We've tried to tweak the prices since, and people know immediately. You alter it even by a penny, they notice. So don't undersell the product when you start. Food type, snacks or more, we've got a menu in a minute, so I'll tell you a little bit more about that. We're developing that more. Bit more to consider, complying with warranties. And you think, well, what's that all about? If you're buying equipment, and when you think about a barista coffee machine, they're anything from £2,000 to £25,000. That's the top of the range. They'll get out of anything that goes wrong with it with the clauses that they put in. And the biggest one I've fallen against recently is we've got hard water. And it's a big thing when your coffee machine goes down, when you're trying to run a coffee shop. So just be careful, and that's where if you lease it, you probably get a benefit, because we bought it, it's gone 7 days, it went 7 days over it's under 12 months, but it went 7 days over what they said I should have changed the water filter. So they're our view. I'm just telling you what's happened to us, so don't do the things that I've done. I think we'll get over it, but it's an issue. Service agreements, because of the equipment, you know, it's important that you get those in place when you're dealing with food. It's another concern. Allergies, get the hospice. What I did with the allergy side of it, I got the hospice chef to deal with all of that problem for me, because they're trained in it. It's not my area, and it's becoming an increasingly big issue with people coming into a shop, regardless of what you are. Cleaning, very different thing. Cleaning the other day I was in there and a volunteer went to get the mop from the kitchen in the cafe area to do something else. You can't mix the products. You've got to have different ones. These are some people it's basic stuff, but some people fall short of it. Food hygiene, getting the right staff to understand the importance, and that's why we've not really involved too many volunteers in the preparation of the food and handling, because of that issue. Do we have public toilets or not? Do you have to have public toilets? There's a certain number of covers that you've got in a cafe where you do, so be mindful of that. Cleaning of it is, we've touched on that, and we've managed to get within 3 weeks of opening a 5-star rating, so that was really good for us. We were pleased with that. So how did I start? What did I do? Lots of different things behind the scenes. These are just some examples where to go. Recently, I think it's just been this week, it's not on there, there's been something at the Birmingham NEC. There's been a show, somebody was just telling me about earlier, a food show. But the BBC Good Food Show is really good to go to get contacts for all the different things that are out there. You've got the hospitality show in Birmingham, London Coffee Festival, and also in May there's Coffee Culture, which is in Olympia. And that's a really good show. All the suppliers to all the cafe industries are there, so it's well worth a visit. It's almost like it's a one-stop shop, really, to get it all sorted, or a lot of it sorted. And then there's another one called Lunch in London. But there are many, many more to Google. That's just a few to give you some ideas. How it works for us is that how we've got it to work. We've got 70 volunteers, so we've got a lot of volunteers in one shop. On average, there's about 15, 16 volunteers in this shop, because it's a big shop, 460 square metres, and you'll see that in a minute. We've got 4 full-time staff, 4 till points, 2 downstairs, 1 in the cafe, 1 in the book department. We close tills down at different times when it's quiet, because we've extended our hours, and some of the traditional volunteers from the bookshop, my bus goes at 4. And it's like, okay. So, and then we sort of, right, so the tills have all been configured that you can sell anything on any of the tills. So we'll put a till closed and people will go down and pay for their books, so it helps us to keep things going. The last thing I wanted to do was put a bottoms of the stairs. Volunteers have gone, oh, the bus is in, we're closed. It was not what we wanted to do. They're slowly staying longer. Big shop, we put security cameras in a big way this time. We've done the first time ever for security tagging of clothing. Still doesn't stop them. You know, they'll still run with it, and they can run a bit faster than me and some of the volunteers. And I mentioned earlier about the food at the hospice, so we won't go on to that one. So there's some of the results of feedback that we've had. Well, I decided to put in what you do in many organisations and cafes and stuff, is we wanted to get a feedback from our customers. The worry about doing that is you have to do it. Do you want to know really what they're thinking? But this is the reality. I haven't messed about with it. It's very true. We asked questions on the reverse of this. These are on all of our tables in the cafe. So we asked about service, staff friendliness, menu choice, food quality, coffee quality, and so on and so forth, as you could see through there. As I say, these will be on the slides. But the results have been phenomenal for me. I know we've got a couple of poor, but it's interesting what they've written on those at 9. But we've got over 2,000 in there, good and excellent. So for me, I think that's a good model. It seems to be working. We'd love to have none of that. The reality is you're always going to get somebody. I think this was an issue a guy had with that we have a minimum spend on our credit card machines, and he wasn't happy. Get alive. But his latest, I don't know what it is, because I've had 6 direct phone calls from the same guy, and the last one was because he uses contactless, and I just don't get it. Because evidently contactless doesn't give you a receipt automatically. The whole point of it is it's quick, you do it, you flash the card, and you go. So you don't put your number in. Bearing in mind you're in a cafe, so you're paying, and you've got to turn around and make the coffee and put your number in. No, he wants a receipt, and he's played up dreadful about it, but he just won't get it. But so I think he's done all 6 bad. I'm going to check the writing actually when I go back and just double check. I'm sure he has. But I think so far that's been a good result for us. And I think the biggest thing for me was on this one is that we have a huge turnover of customers coming in to that cafe constantly. Our name's above it. what effect would it be if we got it wrong? You know, if that wasn't right and it was down here, what effect does our business have on the hospice? So it was a bit of a worry for me. Well, a lot of. So then also we did loyalty cards, where standard stuff, which is great. People expect it. You know, a lot of people say, well, why do you want to do that in a charity shop? It's expected. People want it and use it. So menu choices, just to give you an idea of what we've done. We've been quite particular in the products that we've sourced. I'm a bit of a foodie, and I wanted us to be different. I didn't want to have the same stuff. There is some stuff that's similar, but we wanted to do things like, for example, the grumpy pies, which is always a talking point. They're as good as homemade as you'll ever get, but we haven't got to worry about it. They come in, we can order them fresh in. They deliver once a week, and we cook them in the actual on site. So there's an oven there to do that. Got things like tray bakes from a company in Bristol, top quality stuff. You would not know it wasn't homemade, but the wastage is low. It comes in pre-frozen, but you wouldn't have a clue. The quality is amazing, but you can take out bits and pieces, because the reality is, what with a cafe, where you can lose money is the waste. And it takes a while to get that absolutely right, because you have to fill it at the beginning for people to see what you've got and come back. So this was just some plans I put forward. It was really important to get the right thing for the cafe for us as regards actually the floor space, to try and work out the number of covers that we could get in there. I did a lot of research into what, to a point, it worked to a point, but I was trying to ascertain what business we'd get, how much money we'd get out of it. So if at 9 o'clock till 11 o'clock, half the cafe was full, just having coffee, how much money would we take? From 11 o'clock till 1 o'clock, we'd do this, then 1 o'clock till 2 o'clock was lunch. It was a waste of time. It's nothing like what I thought. It was worth it, and the figures are pretty much where I thought they would be, but the reality is, it's different every day. It's a totally different experience, and you go in and there's a different clientele. And you, I suppose I was in there the other day again, I think by 10:30, you can't get a seat in for coffee. It's amazing. But you do want to get them gone to get the lunch people in. So that was where we were. Just some visuals for you, so you can see exactly what it's like. That's a visual of before and after, or in the middle, actually, of doing it. It was a big shop. Gerard earlier was talking about, I understand where he's coming from. I wouldn't want to put EPOS into 600 shops, the cost of it. It was similar with this, because we wanted the lighting was fantastic in there, but it was costing a fortune to run. So do I change it or not? And we decided to change it, but it was, you know, I don't know, I think there was something like 300 lights or something. It was a lot of lighting. But the reality was it was going to be 10 grand cheaper a year to run than the existing lighting system. So we did and changed it. This is the outside of it. It's the whole building, 4 floors. We operate off 2 at the moment. That was the opening morning. Some more pictures about where it is, trying to get you an exact match above, below and above. Christmas was great. I went to town on decorating it. We had that was about a 16-foot Christmas tree, and decorated it in vintage teacups and put little sweets in for the kids to go in there. So that was good fun. And all the staff from the hospice, well, not all, 25 staff come from the hospice from different departments, nurses and stuff, to help us decorate. And then there's the display till area, so it gives you an idea of what the shop's like. That's probably an average Saturday in that shop. Usually when I go in there, I've counted on a Saturday, very rarely do I count less than 80 odd people in the shop at any one time. It's buzzing, it's really, really good. We did have issues with people's perception of what we'd spent and whether it was right or whether it was wrong. I should have been hung, drawn and quartered by a number of people that were there, but the reality is we do it. What we did do this time, which we've never done before, and sometimes I don't know whether you're the same, in many other businesses you wouldn't just have to justify yourself, but for some reason, I don't know, I feel sometimes you have to sort of justify what you've done, and it's like, you know, but we put you can't quite see it, you can just about see it, we put a pop-up board, and all I did was actually some very clear reasons of why we've done what we've done, and the costs and what we expect to get back in return. And immediately we did that, the issue stopped. So it was good. It was the first time we'd ever done that. We tried to do it through PR, but it doesn't always work. So that was a cue for them to come in. Well, no, that was the opening evening, coming in there. We have a preview night, and I think we had 450 people turned up to the preview night. I for wine and cheese, get anybody in. But I think we took 2,500 that night, so in 2 hours. So it was good. In the first 3 weeks of opening, we took £45,000. So amazing. So this is some images of the shop. The bookshop is over there. You can see the book display at the top of the stairs. But beyond that is the cafe. Downstairs is obviously there with the clothing. Where the name Café Snowdrops, our logo is the snowdrop. So we've actually interpreted that, and our bookshop used to be called Snowdrops. And we've got a proper barista trained in the cafe, so they can do the pretty patterns. I'm trying, can't get there. So frustrating. Again, with the drinks on here, we've gone for different things. We wanted to be different. We wanted to try and make people come to us, not only because they supported us for the hospice, but when they came, it was worth the experience. It was worth going in. So there's no Coke, there's no lemonade. It's all different drinks and different products in there. So the results so far have been, since the move, like for like, because I want to make sure that the business has grown and in certain areas, it was doing a lot better at the beginning. But this is an average since we've opened in June. So the books sales increased by 26%. The ladies' clothing increased by 32% or just over, men's 37%. New goods, interestingly enough, increased by 63%. We do very, very well in there, and it seems the price point doesn't seem to be an issue in this shop. And there's no, if you put a £100 handbag in there, it sells. So it's quite a different dynamic. And Christmas cards have just gone through the roof this year, 339%. Our average number of customers' transactions, we don't measure and haven't measured, and I'm looking into it, is the footfall coming in. But we've got about 1,500 customers' transactions every week, and that's pretty much a standard practice. Average sales across they vary. Sometimes it's 10, 11,000, and sometimes it's 7.5. But it's averaging just under £9,000 a week in that shop, which is pretty good. I think I'm pretty sure the way it's going at the moment, because I've seen in the last few weeks massive increases, because we're still early, still new. It's a new project for us. And people don't know. And we opened at the end of the summer, end of July. So this is, as I say, this presentation you can get from Help the Hospices. What I've done here, just to help, and the whole thing about this presentation is for you to look at and get ideas of what we've done and things to consider. And I'm sure most of you would anyway. But this is suppliers of different equipment, their contact numbers and their addresses. So you can actually go and have a look at what they are. I did a lot of work, which I didn't realise how much time I'd spent getting to this point until I started to put it all down on here, what was actually happening. And so far, it's been a great success. So we'll go to questions now.
So,
go on, we'll start at the front. Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, going back to your map
Yeah.
a little bit. So I'm just trying to make sure I understand it. You have it's a 2-floor setup. On the bottom floor, you have your basic shop, coffee, clothes, and all that. Upstairs, you have essentially half of the space dedicated to tables and cafe, and half of it dedicated to books.
No, it's about a third upstairs to the cafe.
About a third dedicated to
about
cafe.
A third.
The rest of it is books.
Yeah, there's about 18,000 books upstairs. It's about 18,000 books. What we did was, we already had an existing bookshop, as I said. I didn't want to lose that business, so I wanted to at least put the same amount of books that were already in our existing business, because I knew how much I was going to make from that, or hoped. But I also wanted to enhance it, so we managed to increase that by about 50% and still get the cafe in. So, and then the cafe represents about a third of the upstairs.
So when you were saying that you're making around close to £9,000 sales a week in the clothing, and then you mentioned cafe, 2,000, 2,100, is that above the
No,
9?
9,000 is the
Far
total.
above the 9, okay.
The 2,2 is the cafe.
Thanks.
Yeah, all right. I'll come over there in a minute. I'll go round.
I'm just interested where you source your barista training from, because obviously you can't have a cater pack and make sure house at the back anymore.
No. The majority, if not all, the coffee companies and coffee grinding companies all offer barista training.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Generally, we got somebody in from somewhere from another coffee place that had applied for the job, but when you go, they'll give you the training.
Do you ever consider having a point of difference rather than having a barista and an option of different lattes, etc., and going back to the old-fashioned percolated coffee? So
Funny.
The issue of cups wouldn't be such a problem.
Yeah.
Get a cafetiere.
Yeah, you could do. And interestingly enough, the issue we had with the machine went down, and this is with the hard water problem 2 weeks ago. But we had a backup of an old-fashioned percolated coffee machine, and it worked. It was all right, but people were not happy with it.
You did like individual ones, because we thought about doing the vintage tea thing, and that issue that you said about the different sizes of the cups.
That would disappear. Yeah, that would disappear.
So that could be an option,
Yeah,
maybe.
of course you
without
could.
the overhead.
Yeah.
What's your average spend in the coffee shop? Do people always want a cake?
Yeah, generally, I think the average spend is, because there's some highs and lows in it, a coffee or whatever, but it's the average transaction, because some people will buy 2 or 3 things from them, but it's around about £7.50 to £8. Yeah.
Can I just ask you, that's a real pipe dream to have something like that. You've been there, 6 to 8 months. Is there anything now, because I'm sure it's been very, very hard work and worrying nights, worrying days. Is there anything you would have done differently now with hindsight, or areas you would have I'm sorry I didn't give that more space, or would have preferred to have developed more?
I'd have probably given more space to the washing up area. They're a bit squeezed in. I purposely didn't show you that bit. Absolutely. I didn't anticipate how busy it was going to be at certain times, and that's the issue. It's at certain times. We have something at Christmas called the Victorian Fair. We churned the tables over 12 times. We ran out of crockery. We ran out of everything. But that is just an off. And so yes, I would have done that. I probably would have rented the equipment or on a lease purchase, so you get the guarantee of the fact that the product is owned by the lessee. So if there's a problem with it, then you stand a better chance of dealing with the manufacturers over the problem, albeit that still is only for 12 months. And those are probably the 2 things that I'd have probably changed. When we were actually going for it, and the planning permission issue that I had, one of the governors said, well, if you don't get planning permission straight away, don't delay the opening, just open. And I wouldn't. And I'm glad we didn't, because I went in with complete impact. It was bang, it's open, where it would have been, well, they might be doing it, they might not. And I stood my ground and said, no, now. They said, oh, you were right. But no, it was, so that's probably the only 2 things. The positioning of the cafe as well was very important. For me, we had it at the front of the shop overlooking the street, which meant that people have to walk through the downstairs, up the stairs, through the book department, and they're usually picking stuff up all the way. So, which are on the way out.
And I take it you're on the busy high street in Worcester.
Yeah, pretty much so. Yeah.
Hence the high rates.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, Marks and Spencer's is 3 minutes away, but it's not on that road. It's just not. I mean, it was good enough for Lakeland. It's good enough for me. Go on, I'll start there.
How do you go about managing the shop? If you've got a general manager for the whole shop, or is the coffee shop separately managed?
Yeah, there's one manager for that entire shop, because I was going to try and split it, and I've been down that route before, and nobody wants to make, when something goes wrong, well, he said, she said, I said. So we've got one manager. Ian looks after the entire business, and he's supported by a manager that looks after the book department and the floor, and the cafe. And then we've got 2 cafe baristas that work. That's been an interesting one as regards actually getting their timings right, because we open on a Sunday as well. And we probably could do with another one, but I'm holding off at the moment. But it's fine as it is, but it can be a bit tight. But that's how it works at the moment.
Is that 2 full-time baristas?
Yeah.
Yeah. And how many volunteers?
70.
For
Yeah.
Does some of them work in the cafe and the other or
Yeah, some of them mix over. Some of them that are appropriate mix over. Some of them, so a lot of them would like to mix over, but yeah, okay.
do you generally try and keep them?
Yeah. A couple of more questions, and I think we're going to have to call it a night day. Any?
I've been to the coffee shop, but it's fab to say. But can you just remind us all how many covers you've got at the coffee shop?
32.
32.
Yeah.
Is there a downside of the cafe being on the first floor?
No, there's a lift, which
Oh,
is
okay.
which is great, and that's one of the reasons why I didn't mind putting it up there. And the other one was the reality is you go to M&S or go to lots of places, they're usually upstairs, they're usually somewhere else.
So,
So
that answers my question. You
yeah.
have a lift, because it was good to say disabled, travel,
Yeah, have a lift. Yeah. Yeah.
Drop the kids to school.
yeah, the lift was already there, thank goodness. But I'm told they cost about 65,000 to put in.
Oh, yes.
Has there been any issue on rate?
No, let's move away from that one.
Are you anticipating there will be?
No, I'm a good liar.
No, you're not.
Hi Dan. How many months did it take you to actually get into a profitable position just in the coffee shop?
Because we write our expenditure off over 5 years, it's already there. But if you used cash flow into it, I would probably say actually it's probably taken for the cafe department shop about 3.5 months for the cafe alone. Yeah, about 3.5 months, and that's yeah, it's turning a good profit. And once the depreciation's gone out of it, it's gonna at the moment it's running at, even with all the costs and the depreciation, it's running at a profitability of 38 to 40%. And when that drops out, if it continues the business it's doing and growing, which I think it will, it could be returning us around about 52-54% profitability on a £500,000 turnover. That's a nice little income from one shop. Big income. Okay. Thank you. I know. Let this one bed in first. I am looking at it, but we want to get this bed in. It's too easy to make a decision based on a very short period of time, realistically. But this is, you can get this off the Hospice's website, so they'll sort that through down for you. Hope that helps. Thank you very much. Okay, take care.